All right, so it's been a couple of days, and since I did the pour, so I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to remove it from stuff that's underneath. You can see there were several leaks, but that's kind of typical. So it may take a little bit to actually kind of break this thing apart. All right, so let's just kind of analyze it, right? You know, what worked and what didn't. And because then I can really pretty much put this one away, other than the joinery. But for as far as the construction of it, I think it went extremely well. Again, this was made up of firewood, a couple years old, so it's really pretty well dry. I didn't do a moisture content test on it, and it's in small pieces, and it's not going to be relied on to not bend. Plus, when you put that two-part epoxy on it, a couple of coats, especially if I were to do another coat on this side, it's not going to go anywhere. And if it does, it would actually kind of look cool. And you can put second coats and third coats. You can put additional coats on it. I've done that a number of times with our kitchen countertops, which are all the two-part epoxy. And after about 5, 6 years, 7 years, I just clean them up, put some acetone on them, sand them down if I need to, you know, a little bad spot or something. But other than that, I put another coat on. So you can do that if this were to crack underneath. But I don't think it's going to. There just isn't that much strength left anymore on these little parts. So again, if I were going to do this as a bed frame, like on the outside of a bed, first of all, I keep it at the 12 inches, and that's going to be a drum roll kind of thing. Okay, so here's our answer, and that is this is another one that I did. This is prototype, I think number 3 or 4, but it's the multi-board one that we did, right? And that one was 12 1/8, and I was just able to make it on my 12-inch DeWalt sliding compound. So this one will be an absolute no-brainer. It's at 10 1/4, 10 1/8. So this is actually a really good height. In fact, in retrospect, I would probably go back to this size height, which is the insides are, I have a net of 8.5, so we add 3/4 to that because we have 3/8 dado up here, 3/8 dado up here, so the tongue and groove effect, right? And so those guys are about 9.5 inches long, and I think that's a good height. It could go up to 10, maybe 10.5. Well, nope, that's 10.5 there, and that's starting to get too long. So this is actually a really, really good height. So again, conclusions. 1 would be, this really works. 2 is, I really like the looks of it. 3 is stick with this height, and hopefully this would be okay for like a bed, like a mattress. The box spring would, you know, come up part of that and everything else. So I think it would actually be a really good height, and it would look good. This would be great for a footboard. It would be too shallow for a headboard, but that will cover on some other kinds of stuff. And again, really, the two-part poly, where I made the boo-boos were, and I'll cover this, is I didn't put, I should have put a long clamp on these. I should have run a clamp that way, or 2 clamps, you know, one up here, one up here. A couple of Bessies would have been just great for that. You don't need the R&Rs. But then that would have squeezed these tight together. I wouldn't have had that oozing that I had to deal with underneath, where I eventually put the tape in. I'm going to take that off, right? I don't think I'm going to clean this one up because it's a prototype. Otherwise, if it were the real thing, I'd have to take the tape off. Then I'd have to, you know, clean that up. I'm not going to do that. This will be a reminder to me of what not to do. There was also some dripping here because of that, because it came through, and then the two-part epoxy ran on there. But again, all that stuff wouldn't happen if I would have squeezed it together. And then I probably maybe would have even done a 1 coat of the two-part epoxy on the back here, if not 2. The other thing is this was a mistake. I put this really deeply cavitated board on the bottom here, and I shouldn't have done that. That was supposed to have been flipped over the other direction. That was a boo-boo on my part. But otherwise, these would end up being smooth or close to it. The other thing is if I know they're going to be the back, like on a bed, they're not going to be seen. We do want them to be smooth. Then what I would have done is I would have run these through the planer or through the jointer and made them all smooth, because they don't need to be rough. And I probably would have done them on a planer so they would all be the same. And I would do that before I run them through the shaper, because that way then all the distances will be set from the back, which this is, and therefore we'd have a smooth back. If at anything, one coat of the two-part epoxy, you don't even need that. It could have been a couple coats of varnish instead, basically focused on that. So Mike, if you're going to be doing these as beds, do it that way. Smooth, run it through the jointer or the planer first before doing the tongues. Then do the so that, again, you have a smooth finish. Then go ahead and do the you could actually do the glue up and then varnish, and that would be good, because just varnish the back. Well, actually, when you varnish the back, you can varnish the front too, because you have that coat of varnish or two before two-part epoxy anyhow. But that would take care of the back entirely, be completely smooth. Do some sanding, round over, get it so that mattresses and everything, all the bedding, nothing gets caught on it. Then come over, and again, this would all have at least one or two coats of varnish on it, just like I did in the prototype. But then do what I did here. This actually worked out well with the tape, and to block it, basically. I could put, on this one, I could put one more coat because of these little ridges right here. That I already, I think, covered somewhere else, but this is a prototype, so that, again, will remind me not to have that rough of a surface in there. Otherwise, plan on putting on more coats. But other than that, let's just see. I think it's going to work out pretty well. Okay, so this, another one bites the dust, I guess. And this is done as a prototype. And again, you can see this is the one that I did the two-part epoxy in. These are the cutoffs. Isn't that amazing? And this was corrected at a later date. I wanted the space in there, but that was too much. But this is a great opportunity to see how the prototypes work. This is actually that two-part epoxy. That was cool. That's the first time I've ever done that. So anyhow, that prototype is now done. We're on to the next.